Hey guys, welcome to a wrap-up of all the books I read in October. With one exception, there's one I finished in October right at the beginning that I included in my September wrap-up. Once again, it's been a while, but I have a wrap-up for the entire month. Previously in the summer I'd been doing like a wrap-up every week or two, sharing what I've been reading. To be honest, in some ways it's easier to do an end-of-month wrap-up, show you the big stack, but I forget things. I prefer wrap-ups earlier in the month. I'm just gonna do them when works for me. I purposefully take the thumbnail picture so that you can see the spines of all the books that I've read. That way, if you're really interested in my thoughts on one of the books for the wrap-up, you can click on it. But in the future, I'm probably not gonna do like month wrap-ups. Does it matter to you? I don't really know. Definitely the monthly wrap-ups get more views, even though more people have told me that they enjoy the shorter wrap-ups. So I don't really understand that. Will I ever understand YouTube and the algorithm? No. We're just gonna go in the order that my stack is here. So like, kind of like smallest book to largest-ish. So the first one I'm gonna be talking about, and there will be timestamps. So if you wanna like skip to a certain book or skip over a book, you can do that. The first one is The Picture of Dorian Gray. So this is one of the classics off of my list of 50 classics I wanted to read before I died. Before I die, I guess it's not past tense, I'm not dead yet, in case you couldn't tell. Yeah, so The Picture of Dorian Gray. I did a like very chill buddy read over on my Patreon for this, and I have to say, it's not what I expected it to be. The whole plot of Dorian Gray I feel like is fairly well known, but it doesn't actually, the part that I feel like is very well known doesn't actually start until like halfway through the book. Yeah, so I feel like there's not a whole lot can you give spoilers with classic books? This is always my conundrum when it comes to classics. This book made me think a lot about society and how we pick friends and how we have choices and how the choices can affect our lives, and it made me think a lot. I actually didn't hate it. Like, I thought I was going to go into it and just completely hate it. I definitely hated a character. I have a reading vlog where I think the quote was, "I just wanted to push the guy off the cliff." There's a character like that in here for sure. There's a few, but there's like really one. But I didn't hate the book. I appreciated it. I appreciated how it made me think. But I don't really think it's one I'm gonna ever reread again. But I'm glad I read it. Now, coming up, I will have a book haul in a while, but a little sneak peek, there's a couple books in here that will be on that. One of them is Shady Hollow. Isn't it called? Oh yeah, it's just called Shady Hollow. It's a murder mystery, a cozy murder mystery with animals. Somebody sent this to me. They sent it via Book Depository, so you can't send a note. So I would like to thank whoever sent it to me. So if it was you, can you let me know? But sometimes people don't want me to know who's sending books, but I don't like mysteries. I want to solve them. So if it was you, thank you, but please let me know so I can like actually thank you. Yeah, so this is a mystery where it's a cozy mystery set in a woodland forest where all your characters are woodland creatures. This, I think so far, is a 3-book series. I'm not sure if it's going to be more than that or not. And I really enjoyed this. It was fun because it was very much a whodunit mystery. I didn't solve it. I didn't try to solve it, but I had fun going through the whole mystery with our characters. So our main one is Vera Vixen. So she's a fox and she's like a news reporter, and she catches on to the fact that there's obviously been this murder and she's trying to solve it. Of course, my battery died. Vera's trying to solve the mystery before the police, who are bears. There is a handy cast of characters at the beginning, which is fun, tells you a little bit about each of the characters, and then what's really fun is a map of Shady Hollow. So yeah, I don't really know the whole definition of cozy mystery. I feel like some of Agatha Christie's books are and some aren't. This one definitely, I would say, was, and it makes me want to read more cozy mysteries, especially during the autumn, or maybe just all year round. I don't know. I'm definitely going to continue with the series, and it was fun, and thank you so much whoever sent it to me. Okay, this next book. I have never cried more in a book. This is Rilla of Ingleside. So this finishes off the Anne of Green Gables series. We're following her youngest daughter, Rilla, and it starts in 1914. I have thoughts here. So, beginning of World War I, and I feel like this is the first book, maybe the only book, at least the only one that I have noticed, where L.M. Montgomery actually takes events that are going on in the world and incorporates them into her books. I would have loved if the war had not been part of this book. We could have followed Rilla or one of the other kids. This book broke me, broke my heart. I was so sad. So many things. Okay, so Rilla is she's 15 at the beginning of the book. She's very self-centered, shallow. And so like the war does play a part in it because it helps her to grow because of situations. She ends up taking in a orphan baby, a child whose mother has died and his father is off at war. And that really makes her grow into a woman from this really shallow girl that she was. And I get it. But like her brothers are going off to war, the people around are going off to war. A favorite character of mine dies. And then, yeah, try not to say like too much because I don't want to ruin things for people that want to read it. But this baby that she raises for years while his father is off at war, she ends up having to give him up. His father wants him back after the war or whatever. And as someone who just gave up some foster kids, this hit home way too much. So yeah, like books make me tear up. Books can bring tears like rolling down my cheeks, but I've never had a book that did it so many different times with like so many different situations. I'm glad I read it, but like I don't think I ever want to read it again unless I'm like in a completely different mental state. I was reading this like, you know, 2 weeks after our foster kids left or whatever. So it was very fresh and stuff, but I don't know if I can read this one again. I loved it and hated it with a passion at the same time. This month I read 2 Agatha Christie's. The first one was Postern of Fate. This is the last Tommy and Tuppence story. Once again, I love Tommy and Tuppence as characters. They're so in love and so sarcastic, and I really like them. They're in their 70s already in this book. I do not feel like the mystery was written very well. I feel like that is kind of a theme with their mysteries, but I love them so much that I love the book. So in this one, they move into the country, into this new home, and there is a mystery. Tuppence comes across a book with a code in it, and she decodes it, and this kid had said that this person had died, but it had been a murder or something. So then there's this really old murder that they're trying to solve, and things going on in the village that present day that are sketchy. Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the series. It wasn't very well written. And I don't know if that was on purpose because they're in their 70s and I don't know, like slowly forgetting things, although they're still pretty quick. I'm not sure if it was just supposed to feel like you were 70 along with them or if it was just not the best writing. But I still love Tommy and Tuppence so much. A middle grade book that I read, middle grade science fiction, is The Lion of Mars. So this one is about a small community on Mars. So there are a few different countries that have, colony isn't even the right word because they're so tiny, little settlements of people on Mars. So we're following the United States. They have like 5 to 6 adults and 6-ish what were brought as babies but are now like teenagers or tweens. And so our main character, okay, his name is Belle, which really annoyed me because I was listening to the audiobook and so I kept thinking Belle as a girl, but Belle is a boy. It's just Bell too. So if I'd been reading the book, it might have helped a little bit. So something happened years before where the US colonies stopped interacting with the other countries that are on Mars, and their colony is kind of falling apart, and something happens and they need the other countries but they're too stubborn to do anything about it. Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I think my kids will really like it. I bought it on audio because it was on sale recently and I think they'll enjoy it. There was a part in the book where I was like, where is this even going? I kind of it was losing me, but then things really started to happen. So I feel like if you start reading this book and there's a point where you're like, not really interested, I would say press on, because it does get better, and I really enjoyed the last half. Okay, I never did figure out how to pronounce this. This was my Patreon pick. I picked it out of a jar. My patrons have the opportunity to give me suggestions on books I should read, so each month I'm reading one. So I read the first volume. There's actually 3 volumes in this one. It is a story about these Rurouni? Ooh, guys, I don't know. Who are like special warriors, and this girl who owns this, I can never think of all the correct terminology. She has a small studio where she trains warriors, and I did not love it. I was actually more confused in this one than I am with a lot of books, and I think part of it was the illustrations. Our main male character looks a lot like a girl with his long hair, and the author did make a comment somewhere too about how that was a bit of a struggle. So I kept struggling to figure out who was who and who was saying what. So I need to do a video sharing my favorite manga soon, because there have been some really good ones I've enjoyed, but this one unfortunately wouldn't make the list. This is like a picture book for adults is how I describe it. It's Big Panda and Tiny Dragon picture book. It's little snippets. This goes through the seasons. So we start with spring with Panda and Tiny Dragon, and they're just inspirational quotes, motivational sayings. This was, I think, originally, or a lot of inspiration was taken from the Buddhists, and so reading it, I was like, there's some really good lines in here, but also like I have to leave a lot of the self-helpy ones. It was a little over the top in some ways, but this was just a fun little read through. There was a few quotes I was like, oh, I should write some of these down. It's just a lot of, you know, being kind to others, and how if you're living life with somebody, that's better than living it alone. So it was a cute little read. Then I got out Nadine Brande's newest book. So actually I read 4 new releases that have come out this autumn, this month. Wishtress, which I keep wanting to say wish trees. That's what my brain reads, but it's Wishtress. So this is a fantasy story where there is a well where people can gain talents, but the king that has been in power for a while is trying to hide the well and restrict people from getting talents, but our main character is one of the rare people. She's a Wishtress. There's only ever one, I guess, and there are seasons where there is none. She, as the Wishtress, was born with her talent, and her tears, each tear can grant a wish. For the most part in the book, she is living with her grandmother, and they are selling these wishes kind of on the black market, because it would be dangerous if people knew she was a Wishtress. But then the king is assassinated, and I don't know, things get, I guess our main character, what was her name again? Mirth. She does something that triggers some negative events, and she becomes cursed, and the next time she cries a tear, which could grant a wish, she will die. Yeah, so I think I gave this one 4 stars. It was a fun read, but I feel like it wasn't up to her other books, or I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Fox and Romanov, but I still did enjoy it. It was 4 stars. Okay, next ones are a couple more new releases. The Lost Melody by Joanna Davidson Politano. So this one, she always writes Victorian, in the Victorian time period. So our main character is Vivienne. She is a concert pianist. Her father dies at the beginning of the book, so she has to have this period of mourning where she's not allowed to perform. Her manager guy, I don't really know what his actual title was, won't let her work during this mourning period. He thinks it will look bad if she's playing piano when she's supposed to be in mourning, even though her father was not the nicest guy, and she's actually really excited that he's dead. And then there's something that happened, I think it was something in the will, and then something that happened with this random guy at this concert she was doing that makes her curious about a local asylum. And so because she can't play piano during her mourning period, but she still wants to make some money, or she's curious about this asylum, she goes and works there, and circumstances end up happening that she ends up being committed and considered a patient. And I talked about this a little bit on my Patreon book club, because this book gives me feelings of like claustrophobia, because it's like a panic. Because if somebody was trying to commit me to a sane asylum, I don't think I would be very calm and like sane sounding when I'm trying to explain that I'm not insane. I would start freaking out and doing things that would probably make me look insane. And yeah, so what I really appreciated about this book, Joanna Davidson Politano's books in general, is her main characters always have not like a perfect relationship with God, but like their prayers are so personal. I don't think they're Victorian era appropriate. Like most people wouldn't have had such a personal relationship with God, I don't think, during this time, but I really appreciate it as someone reading it now. There's always so many lines in her books that I highlight and enjoy, so definitely recommend this one. This video is going to be forever long. This is another reason I need to do these more frequently. Another new release is The Premonition at Wither's Farm, the newest Jamie Jo Wright. I flew through this book. So we've got 2 timelines. Actually, I forget what the first one was. August 1910. So we have a young woman whose mother is a like spiritualist. She's all into, well, she pretends that she can, you know, talk to dead people, and she does like all those things. I don't know. I can never think of the right words for this. She considers herself a spiritualist, but she's like supposed to be like a medium. And her father was a Christian, but he died a number of years previous. And there is someone killing women in the area, and then in like the fields nearby. And then present day, we actually follow a woman who is married. I think this is the first Jamie Jo Wright where our present day character is married. We've had one that's husband passed away, and the rest have all been single. So that was really cool. Her and her husband have recently moved to this new farmhouse that is, the foundation is partially old gravestones, like messed up gravestones where they spelt things wrong, and then they use that for the foundation. So that's creepy. I mean, I don't believe in ghosts, but I still wouldn't want my house built on a foundation of old tombstones. Yeah, so Molly is our present day character. She has struggled with infertility. She's struggling a lot with depression. So there is definitely some trigger warnings in this book for a lot of those things. I think she, like Jamie Jo Wright, has done a really good job portraying the depression and the things that she's feeling. She's struggling in her marriage because of all of this. And as a result as well, she can hear dead people, or she's hearing things that she thinks are dead people. Yeah, so somehow those 2 timelines intertwine, and she always just has me sitting at the edge of her seat. So highly recommend all the Jamie Jo Wright, but they all do come with a little bit of trigger warnings because they're hard topics that she'll tackle, but I feel like she always does them in such a good way. Okay, another Agatha Christie. We've got Hallowe'en Party. So this is one of her last Poirot books, the 3rd last. We are at a Halloween party, and this 13-year-old Joyce says she once saw a murder, and then later that night she has been found murdered. So we are trying to figure out what happened. This is a pretty good whodunit, because there is quite the specific cast of characters. I didn't specifically try to figure it out, but it might have been possible. I just enjoyed the ride. Poirot books, generally not like my most favorite. This one definitely isn't going to make it on a favorites list, but I had fun with it. Okay, this one is another one, or one that I had to read for my library book club, The Spoon Stealer. So I talked about this on my live at the beginning or at the end of October. So our main character, the first chapter starts out, she's like an old lady in her 70s, I think. And she's talking to what I thought was a friend. Our main character is gonna go to this like function at the library. She says goodbye to her friend, but when she gets back from the library, her friend is talking to her and saying, oh, you took so long, now you're so lucky I didn't piddle on the floor. And then she goes pees in the bushes. And I'm like, oh, it's not an old lady, it's a dog. I'm not a fan, like, okay, first of all, like I have had and do have now cats, and I do talk to them, and maybe sometimes I'll pretend like they're saying something, but we didn't get acknowledgement until I don't know how far into the book, like halfway, that okay, it's a little weird that she's talking to her dog, or like some acknowledgement that she's pretending that her dog's talking or anything. So that was a struggle, but I did get into the story. So our main character is going to this library book club or it's a memoir writing club. She's sharing some of her story, and her story is crazy. The things that she went through, I think she was alive during World War I and World War II, and the things that happened. And I was getting really into it. And then the ending was so terrible, I got a little angry. I just feel like the author was trying to check some boxes, and she's like, oh, I haven't included this, so I'm going to include this at the end, even though it does not really even apply to the entire book. Yeah, I would not recommend this book at all. And it's not even because of the dog stuff. I got over the dog stuff. It was okay. Yeah, that happens a lot with library book clubs, and I don't like that. Okay, and my last new release, this one came out in September. The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman. This is the third book in the Thursday Murder Club, and this is the first time that I like actually physically read some of it. So I listened to some and read some. I talked about it a bit in my reading vlog last week. Yeah, so we're following a group of retirees as they try to solve a mystery. There is a woman that is like a journalist or something, and she disappeared a few years ago. Her car went off a cliff, and they're assuming that she died but never found a body. Yeah, so this one, definitely, I enjoyed the mystery. I like the ending. I hadn't finished the ending in my last reading vlog because I feel like it was different, and I appreciated that. But there are a few scenes in here that I feel like didn't have to be in here. There's some couples that are forming throughout the series that I feel like we're seeing a little more than I would like to, but it wasn't enough for me to like not enjoy the book. I'm definitely, the next time I read, because I'm going to reread this series, I'm going to read them physically and like highlight all the funny lines. There's just so many things that cracked me up. So yeah, if you liked the other two books, I think you'll like this one, but I don't know. I'm curious to know if anyone likes this one more than the first two. I personally like the first one best. I know most people like the second one best. I'm curious to know where people stand on this one. Okay, and then the last one was Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. So I did some Sherlock rereading. This was for Karina's nostalgic readathon that she was doing. Yeah, so I love Sherlock. No big surprises. Actually, I was surprised at how much I remembered. I would start a story and be like, huh, I don't remember the story at all. And then like a page in, it's like, oh yeah, I know exactly how this is gonna end. So that was fun to see if I actually knew what was going to happen. But not as fun as the first time when I got to be surprised. But I always recommend Sherlock. Actually, that's not 100% true. I much prefer the shorter stories like The Adventures of Sherlock, The Return of Sherlock, and what's the middle one? The Memoirs of Sherlock. I'm not a huge fan of like The Hound of Baskervilles, The Sign of Four, A Study in Scarlet, like the longer stories. So I always recommend his short stories. Okay, this is going to be a long video, but that is a wrap-up of all the books I read in October. Next time I will do shorter wrap-ups. I think Amanda from the Curly Reader is doing like wrap-ups every time, video wrap-ups every time she reads like 5 books, and I feel like that's probably a good number. I think I'm going to kind of do something like that in the future, but I'll always try to have the spines displayed on the thumbnail so you can see which books I'm going to be talking about. So let me know some of the books that you enjoyed recently in the month of October. And I'm also looking for some like really good Christmas book recommendations since that's coming up soon. So if you have any, let me know. Thanks for being here, guys.